Have you ever had to choose between male, female, or sometimes elusive not specified on a legal or medical form? Have you ever wondered why, or how these categories came about? Sex is strange. We think we know what sex is, or at least we know what our own sex is, right? Well, that's not the case. What you know about sex, what you know about your own sex, is not a complete picture and might even be outright incorrect. To show you this, let's start with defining sex and how we've thought about it through history. Humans have pondered about sex since the first millennium, when Aristotle proposed that your sex was determined by the heat of your body. Since then, scientists have theorized that a wide range of characteristics make an organism male or female. One of the first modern models of sex was the genitalia model. Sex was thought to be your external genitalia, or, to be more specific, whether you had a penis or a vulva. This is still how we decide the sex of a newborn baby and to put on a birth certificate. In the 1870s, cases of hermaphroditism, the condition of having both reproductive organs, showed that the genitalia model was not foolproof. On top of that, scientists were having trouble figuring out the sex of other animals. For example, scientists were puzzled by female hyenas because they lacked external vaginal openings. Perhaps sex could not be identified at a glance, so scientists turned inwards. They dissected animals and found either testes or ovaries. Collectively known as the gonads, these were thought to determine an animal's true sex. In the 1900s, scientists began to question the root of sex differences. We see differences in anatomy, but why is that? In 1916, Frank Lilly, an American zoologist, studied cows with external female genitalia and internal male gonads, known as free martins. He thought that since free martins were always born with a male twin, the male twin would have released male hormones in the womb, causing free martins to have ambiguous sexual characteristics. His work gave rise to the hormonal model of sex. Hormones are teeny tiny molecules that are used to communicate between organs and tissues. Sex hormones are hormones made by those gonads we talked about earlier. Your sex hormones talk to other organs in your body and are responsible for things like sexual arousal, puberty, muscle growth, immunity, and more. You've probably heard about them before. There are 3 types of sex hormones: androgens, which includes testosterone, estrogens, and progestogens. Although you may think that testosterone is a male hormone or that estrogen is a female hormone, both are present in every body, just at different levels. And even within males or females, hormone levels vary, and they also vary throughout your life, the week, or day. For example, menopause happens when estrogen levels are low, typically around 50 years of age. People with polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS, may also have higher androgen levels than the normal population. And even within normal, healthy adults, hormone levels are different from person to person. Around the same time as the proposal of the hormonal model, the metabolic model was theorized by Patrick Geddes and J. Arthur Thompson, 2 guys that sound British already, and they look exactly like how you imagined. Specifically, they thought that catabolism, the breakdown of compounds, caused maleness, whereas anabolism, the buildup of compounds, caused femaleness. We now think that your sex hormone levels can affect your metabolism, but other variables like body size, muscle density, age, and lifestyle also change metabolism. Then there was the chromosomal model. In 1890 and 1905 respectively, the X and Y chromosomes were discovered and later referred to as sex chromosomes. Males were thought to have XY chromosomes and females have XX, but now we know it's much more complicated than that. For example, people with XX chromosomes can grow male characteristics known as 46XX testicular disorder. People with XY chromosomes can also develop female genitalia, known as Swyer syndrome. These genetic variations and many others show that sex is not simply binary and not just defined by your chromosomes. Some people believe that although these genetic variations exist, they do not prove that these conditions are part of a normal healthy variation. Often, these people are proponents of the gamete model of sex. The Darwin-Bateman paradigm states that sex differences come from anisogamy, or the difference in size between the egg and the sperm. Although Bateman made this claim all the way back in 1948, he could not provide evidence for it, and an explicit mathematical explanation for the link has been proposed only recently. Scientists are still debating about the link between gamete size and sexually selected traits today. This is by no means an exhaustive list of all the models of sex that have ever been proposed. And as you can see, science doesn't produce permanent and rigid definitions of sex, and that these scientific definitions are always understood in the context of the theory it was proposed with. Take phlogiston. We once believed that there's this substance called phlogiston that was contained in objects and released when they were burned. At the time, the scientific evidence that supported phlogiston was as real and as empirically verifiable as any other scientific concept. But as science tread along, we learned about gases and that it's actually oxygen that gets released when objects are burned, not phlogiston. Phlogiston is a dramatic example, but the scientific concepts evolve as theories are revised. Furthermore, human culture and society shape the theories that we propose. We think that polyandry in birds, or when one female bird meets with multiple male birds at the time, was recognized much later than it should have been because of the biases created by our societal norms. This does not mean that science is not real, but rather, how we choose to define sex involves a choice of what values, interests, and purposes we see our definitions advancing. So, coming back to what is sex and what is your sex, you might realize we're in a bit of a pickle. What theory and thus definition of sex should we follow? Do all of these definitions of sex line up neatly in one person? That is to say, if I have a vulva, do I must have ovaries, XX chromosomes, the right level of all the hormones, etc.? Perhaps sex can be viewed as composed of these many different dimensions or multiplicities: the genetic, hormonal, morphological, environmental, and so much more. Take person A and you can plot their sex on any combination of these dimensions. And all these dimensions in one person do not have to line up neatly in a single categorization of male or female. Rather than simply asking if someone is male or female in a medical form, perhaps it's more important to ask the most appropriate dimension in context. For example, if I'm showing up to be screened for cancer, it might be more important to ask if I have prostates or ovaries instead of my sex. If we're concerned with my hormonal levels, maybe that's what should be addressed. And if there doesn't seem to be a dimension of sex that is most appropriate in the given context, maybe it shouldn't be a question at all. So next time, when you have to check a box on a form, it might be worth asking yourself, why are they asking for this information? Is there a better question that should be asked? Or does anything need to be asked at all?